So, whatever happened to that classic show that was not only incredibly popular but also incredibly divisive, the 1970s British sci-fi fiction TV show Space, 1999? Let's find out. Movies, music, and monsters. Hey my friends, Dan Monroe here talking about movies, music, and monsters. Well, my friends, here we go. Space, 1999, probably, and I kid you not, the most requested show from all you guys that I've ever gotten in the last year and a half, and to be completely honest with all of you, I was hesitant to even attempt to dive into this one simply because of the tremendous amount of information and details surrounding this extremely popular show from the 1970s. I'm going to do something I've never done before in the history of this channel. I'm doing a two-parter this week, the overview and retrospect of the show, but next Saturday, a super huge dive all about the incredible models and ships from the show, where they ended up today. So definitely set your calendars for next Saturday when I release Space 1999 Part 2, Whatever Happened to the Eagle Transporters. I can hardly wait. I've ordered 60 gallons of stale popcorn just for the event.
I'll bring the synthetic butter.
So, grab your moon base and your Eagle transporter vehicle with a bucket of stale popcorn and let's dive in. Now, before we get started, super huge thanks to James Small of smallartworks.ca, excellence in model building, for once again supplying a ton of photos and information about the show, but also to a new friend, incredibly talented guy named Jeffrey Morris, who is a writer, director, and designer who has just completed an incredible film called The Eagle Obsession, an amazing, visually stunning feature-length documentary that follows Jeff as he investigates not only the origins of the iconic Eagle vessel, but also the ongoing global impact of the moon landings. The film is going to be released this year, but for more information about this incredible piece of work, check out Jeff's website at eagleobsession.com, and the incredible trailer links to both are in the description. I've seen this film. You are not going to want to miss it. Now, for those of you who have never seen Space 1999, it was essentially a mid to late 1970s British science fiction series that ran for 2 seasons, from 1975 through 1977, and due to humanity storing its nuclear waste in various disposal sites on the far side of the moon, going thermonuclear on the 13th of September 1999, the Earth's moon is blown out of orbit. Commander Koenig and Dr. Russell lead the remaining survivors of the Scientific Research Center, Moon Base Alpha, as it wanders aimlessly throughout the galaxy. Wandering aimlessly through the galaxy sounds like what I was doing with the Robinsons 60 years ago on Lost in Space.
Here it is 60 years later and you're still wandering aimlessly throughout space. Well, actually, New York.
Now, there's one thing I've always found really fascinating about any type of series, be it a movie series or a TV series, is watching how the show evolves over time. Lost in Space started off as a fairly serious science fiction adventure, but eventually plummeted into bizarre campiness. I had nothing to do with that. It was Jonathan Harris. He didn't want to be written off the show.
Oh, please. Get a life.
The original Star Wars trilogy went from super fun to super dark to super marketable for toy sales, and this show was certainly no different, with Season 1 and Season 2 being so incredibly different that you could almost consider them two completely different shows, with Season 1 being the more serious sci-fi adventure, while Season 2, well, let's just say it went way off in a a completely different direction with way more kid-friendly stories and monsters and a lot more action, but I'm quite sure that there's a lot of fans out there that enjoy both seasons equally. It's really hard to even begin drawing a comparison between the two due to the fact that they were just so incredibly different.
Face it, Season 1 was like watching M give orders to 007 for an hour. Tea time, don't you know?
Hip, hip, Cheerios and all that rot.
That's Cheerio, not Cheerios.
In America, it would have been Captain Crunch and whole milk instead of tea.
If you had been in a Space 1999 episode, it would have been canceled before the opening credits.
Space 1999 was the very last show in a very long line of sci-fi projects that Jerry and Sylvia Anderson produced together, beginning way back in the early 1960s with Supercar, along with the super marionation fantasy shows like Stingray, Thunderbirds, Fireball XL5, and others, and eventually the very strange live-action science fiction drama from 1970 called UFO.
Face it, Season 2 should have been shot with puppets. The Andersons couldn't rip away from their roots the way the moon ripped away from the Earth.
This show experienced a great deal of divide, similar to the musical rivalry between what side of the aisle you're on, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. Many sci-fi enthusiasts often battle within the deep confines of internet blogs about which science fiction show was better, Space 1999 or Star Trek.
Tough call. See you at the next Space 1999 convention.
A lot of people simply dismiss this show as a less popular Star Trek ripoff, despite the obvious similarities of crews having adventures in space. The overall vibe, to me anyway, between the two is really quite different, so I don't really honestly know what the problem is.
There was far less tea and scones in Star Trek.
However, 1999 did hire a former Star Trek producer who did eventually become the showrunner in the second season, which to me was the primary reason for the extreme change in the theme of the show, but we'll get to that. A lot of criticism, mostly from the critics, but also by some of the fans, is that the acting in the show just came across as bland, boring. Some reviewers even claimed that the acting was as wooden as the marionettes used in Thunderbirds. Not really sure if I would go quite that far, but the show definitely had a much slower, humorless feel and pace, at least at first, that is, until, again, Season 2. But we'll get to that.
Get to what?
What?
You said we'll get to that.
Get to what?
Cybernetic Alzheimer's. This is how it starts.
Okay, here's a strange little tidbit that I noticed while researching this show. Just one of those little things that makes you stop and go, huh. 99% of shots of Martin Landau that I could find, he is facing camera left every single shot. Holy Jiminy Christmas, did this guy like that particular side of his face or what? Okay, a lot of times I'll do a gentle segue from whatever topic I'm talking about into our sponsor segment, but today, forget it, I'm going to cut right to the chase. Why? Because this is one of those times that I personally get excited about a product, and as I've mentioned before, I've been taking AG1 for over a year now, and I absolutely love it. I take it every day, but there was always one thing that I thought could really make this product shine, and that's if they had different flavors. Well, my friends, the day has come. The next generation of AG1, now in 4 different flavors, now introducing a sweet yet tangy lemon and orange citrus flavor, a fruity tropical flavor, and my personal new favorite, the berry flavor, which is a delicious blend of blueberry and strawberry, still giving you all the incredible benefits as the original. Simply put a scoop of AG1 in some cold water, shake it up, drink it down, and bingo, you're done. With only one scoop, you're getting all your multivitamins, both pre- and probiotics, with antioxidants, which not only support your energy level, but improves digestion and gut health. The almost immediate burst of energy that I feel after drinking it definitely supports your immune system. I've noticed that for sure in the last year, I can tell you that. Clinical studies show that this next generation of AG1 is backed by 4 clinical trials, and you can get all this literally for less than $3 a day when you subscribe. I mean, think about it. You can either go out and buy a bad $3 cup of coffee or get everything you need to keep your mind, your gut, and your body healthy for the entire day. Pretty simple choice if you ask me. So, click the link in the description box below, or easier yet, just scan this QR code to get your free welcome kit worth $76 when you subscribe, including 5 AG1 travel packs, which I personally find to be extremely convenient, a really cool shaker bottle, and a bottle of AG vitamin D3 plus K2 AG1, finally with some delicious new flavors to try, and it really makes me feel better, and it might just make you feel better too. And now, back to Space 1999. It's very interesting to note that much of the visual design and pre-production work for Space 1999 was not only heavily influenced by 2001: A Space Odyssey, but literally came from the planned second season of UFO, and was going to be primarily set on the moon and featuring a large moon base. So, in 1972, the head of ITC Entertainment, Lou Grade, was considering financing the second season of UFO, called UFO 1999, but the ratings for UFO really took a huge drop near the end of its run, so that second season never came to be, allowing much of the story elements and design work to be carried right over into Space 1999.
Funny to think that in 1999, bell-bottom trousers never went out of style.
Funny to think that in 2025 you're still wearing poopy pants from 1966. Suits you, however.
Enter the lead stars of the show, Martin Landau and Barbara Bain, who had previously worked together in Mission Impossible, a great show which was produced by Desilu Productions for CBS, which ran for 7 years from 1966 until 1973. Landau, who played Commander Koenig, who, in the first season, rarely, if ever, smiled at all, and then smiled way too much in the second season. Overall, a very interesting character, crossing over between a logical, quiet thinker, determined to make the right command decisions, and then, on the flip side, coming across loud and brash, sometimes almost on the verge of a nervous breakdown.
Just like you, Robot, when I joined the show as a regular.
A regular what? Jerk?
I'm not entirely sure whether the character arc was planned that way, or if the writers on the show just didn't pay any attention to what the other writers were doing. Either way, an interesting character, complex to say the least. That is, again, until season 2.
But we'll get to that.
Get to what?
Barbara Bain played Dr. Helena Russell, the chief medical officer, often being what we would call, the voice of caution in any particular disastrous situation, similar to Dr. McCoy in Star Trek in some respects.
Just with a little more blush and lipstick, maybe.
Did you ever see Dr. McCoy after hours? Woo-hoo!
With her character and the commander's character occasionally teaming up together in the first season, but by the time the second season rolls around, let's just say they're definitely together, not really a very hard stretch, as they were married.
Wow, reminds me of you and your 14th wife, Debbie, always working together creatively as a true power couple.
Yeah, I kinda got lucky with that one.
Luck had nothing to do with it. Debbie pulled you out of the gutter and lifted you back up into a real and true existence of folk songs.
Anyway, as talented and dedicated as Martin Landau was, he certainly had a lot of, shall we say, Shatner in him, that's for sure, often becoming extremely threatened with guest stars that might have more lines than him. If anyone was going to save the day at the end of the show, it was absolutely going to be him, and only him. When entering the room with other characters, the other actors had to walk behind him, and this is kind of bizarre. Barbara Bain, whose character had a lot more to do in the second season than the first, wanted her character's makeup to be very light and pale, while Landau wanted his overall tone to be very dark and masculine, something that became quite an issue while filming the episodes for the lighting people, who had to figure out clever and creative ways to light them both properly without one coming across too dark and the other coming across washed out.
It's kind of interesting. Unlike most contemporary television, like Kojak or The Streets of San Francisco, whereas in this kind of a show, traveling and hurtling through space, your adversary is something mind-boggling every week, and as a result, to relate to that on a level that is not that far removed from our own, because 1999 is only 23 years into the future. I mean, we're not out there by choice. In fact, technologically and emotionally, we're not really ready to go into deep space. It's an accident that causes us to do that.
Prolific British actor Barry Morse played Professor Victor Bergman, Alpha's scientific advisor during season 1, more or less the character that kind of like looks at all the strange scientific phenomenon and then tries to figure them out with educated guesses, often just picking theories out of thin air, a lot of exposition on his part to fill in the gaps, and if there happens to be something that he can't figure out scientifically, he'll just mull over the entire situation with a good bit of philosophy and a spot of tea. Overall, an extremely popular character. Other supporting characters include Australian actor Nick Tate as Alan Carter. However, originally, an Italian actor was set to play the lead Eagle pilot, while Nick was going to play a secondary pilot who was actually going to die in the first episode, but the producers liked him, and when the Italian actor was unable to be in the series, the director replaced him with Nick and elevated the Alan Carter role. Now, as far as the other supporting characters, they were basically just there to fill in particular story plots or character roles, other than maybe the second-in-command character, Paul Monroe, played by Prentice Hancock, who appeared in most of the season 1 episodes. You know, the guy with the mustache. Clifton Jones as David Cano, Ziana Merton as Sandra Bennis, who was a very popular character anytime the script needed someone to faint, scream, get injured, or get captured. And then there's all the super cool special effects, most notably the highly beloved Eagle spacecrafts inspired by other real-world ships. Such super cool ships capable of having different modules for different purposes. They could transport cargo and medical supplies and even hold their own in some pretty fun outer space battles, even though I can't even begin to count how many of these spacecraft were either destroyed or crashed throughout the course of the show. I mean, holy Jiminy Christmas, how many of these Eagle ships were there anyway?
I'm pretty sure the Eagle pilots took their training courses from Major West from Lost in Space.
West crashed the Jupiter 2 more than he ever actually landed it.
The epic landscape of original one-of-a-kind screen-used TV and movie props has just been reshaped, with sound and vision ushering in a new revolutionary era for collectors with their first auction online now through September 9th. Don't miss these amazing one-of-a-kind offerings like a Kylo Ren helmet worn by Adam Driver in Star Wars The Force Awakens, a Hero Wonder Woman costume worn by Gal Gal Gadot, a hero Christian Bale cowl from The Dark Knight, a hero Chris Evans helmet from Captain America the First Avenger, and an amazing pair of hands by Stan Winston Studios and worn by Johnny Depp in Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands. Prop wands used by major characters in all the Harry Potter films, sound and vision. Michael Jackson's stage-worn glove from 1984, a stage-played Eddie Van Halen guitar, and so much more you literally have to see it to believe it. Sound and vision. A new and exciting chapter in Hollywood auctions. Check out over 300 lots up for auction at sxv.art. Fun fact, while George Lucas was in the process of designing ships for the original Star Wars, he had one particular model that was going to be the Millennium Falcon, but it just happened to look a little too much like the Eagle ships from Space 1999, so several modifications were made to the model and it was eventually reworked as the Rebel Blockade Runner. One very cool thing about George was that he just loved paying homage to sci-fi props of the past, like Maria from Metropolis being the direct inspiration for C-3PO.
Yeah, 3PO was just Maria in drag.
Surprisingly, most of the special effects were achieved in camera rather than relying on blue or green screen techniques, most of the time shooting the models and miniatures with black backgrounds, allowing the film to then be wound back for a second run through the camera, exposing a new layer of imagery to the film frame, with some optical effects like ray gun beams and energy fields being added in post-production. Some of the simpler effects were achieved by simply reflecting images onto glass, and when the second season rolled around, things got pretty cheap looking when it came to special effects, often having actors simply standing behind a window or an opening in the set that was supposed to represent, I guess, a view screen. Composer Barry Gray not only supplied the music for Space 1999, but almost all the music for the productions that the Andersons created all the way back to their first puppet shows in the 1950s, composing many grand musical arrangements that would be used primarily through the first year, but for budgetary reasons, a lot of secondary music in the show was pulled from the composer's other works from many of the other Anderson projects, not to mention numerous musical cues in some episodes from just standard music libraries. The super memorable Season 1 theme was essentially just a full orchestra playing alongside with a funk rock band. Doesn't really translate all that well to me personally 50 years later. Definitely seems to date the material quite a bit, but I suppose also gives it a little bit of its charm.
It's like freaky, man. Real freaky. We're gonna freak out together.
Space 1999 premiered in Britain in September 1975, screening in different regions, on different days, in different time slots, almost, but not quite, being sold to a U.S. network, but rather sold directly to individual TV stations, basically syndication, where it began screening in the U.S. in the fall of 1975. Now, after the conclusion of the 24 episodes of Season 1, the writers began accumulating stories for Season 2, which, as I mentioned before, was almost a completely different show than Season 1. Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, the creators of the show, had finally called it quits on their marriage completely, so Sylvia left the show for Season 2, and even though the ratings in America for Season 1 were pretty good, ITC New York had no intentions whatsoever to finance the second season on its own.
I say, Governor, can you spare some cutter, me brother?
Tuppence for the birds.
Rather than the normal short break in between seasons, it was actually about 8 months until production began again, and there was really a very large question as to whether or not during that time the show would even continue at all. ITC was absolutely insistent that the show needed a new American head writer, so Jerry Anderson hired Fred Freeberger, who was the producer in the final season of the original Star Trek series, as well as other classics like Blood Arrow and Susie Steps Out. And since it was rather obvious that this was indeed going to be the final season of Star Trek, Freeberger jumped ship and joined this show. Interesting to note that the final season of Star Trek is absolutely considered the weakest season that Trek had. Then, suddenly, the second season of Space 1999, at least to some people, suffered the same fate, both sharing one particular thing in common, obviously, this producer guy. Now again, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the second season was bad, it was just different.
It certainly is interesting the way you sugarcoat that second season.
Yeah, if only they had used puppets.
Okay, but keep in mind something that maybe a lot of people didn't know, that Space 1999 up to that point was the most expensive science fiction program ever made, and both seasons of the show had a huge impact on many people all over the world.
Yes, antacid sales were up internationally.
Not only for its initial 2-year run, but also the years of syndicated reruns. The film quality, the sets, and the special effects were absolutely outstanding, not only for the time, but I personally think they still hold up pretty well today.
Okay, but what about the actual models and props from the show? You didn't even touch on all the amazing details surrounding the super cool Eagle ships, and where are they today?
Like I said earlier, that's all going to be covered in an entirely separate episode altogether.
It will be covered in an entirely separate episode.
Next week, next Saturday, the super cool history of the Eagle transporter ships. So, stay tuned for that. Space 1999 was not only an incredible, groundbreaking science fiction achievement for both space enthusiasts and sci-fi fans alike, but is truly become a staple in the hearts and minds of all those kids growing up in the classic space age, dreaming about what it might be like one day to leave this Earth and sail away into the deep beauty of the cosmos, taking its place among other great and not so great sci-fi shows and movies throughout the 70s and 80s, including Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, Alien, Saturn III, Silent Running, and so many more. We could be here all day, but that, my friends, I really hope you guys enjoyed that deep dive about Space 1999, and if you did and you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. I've got a whole bunch of new videos coming up really soon that I know you guys are just gonna dig.
And if you'd like to help support the channel, you can always buy us a coffee. Link in the description.
And please feel free to stop back anytime as we together continue the conversation on movies, music, and monsters.
Movies,
Music, and monsters.